So you're working as a laborer in construction.
Nights and weekends, and quickly was operating, and then quickly was like leading some guys and trusted to be left alone on job sites. And I'm talking, I mean, homeowner septic sewers and basements and just grading projects, drainage projects. And the guy who owned that excavating quickly latched on, like, oh, this is a farm kid. I could run anything. I could drive anything. I was pretty smart with numbers and math and reading blueprints. And so it was quick that I was taking leadership role there, and he entrusted me with a lot. And so I think within 6 months of like moving to Indianapolis and going to work and being an employee at this excavating company, at 6 months I was already like, hey, what's your thoughts on this business or businesses in this industry? Like, what's the biggest problem you face? And just asking him these questions.
Where did you learn to be curious about that?
Probably my father, just with the farming world. I mean, I knew some of the operations and economics of business and farming, and I saw the challenges of the business model in agriculture, and also the ugly outfalling of the family farm operation. Boy, that's a rapid education of what can go wrong in business and what business can be and partnerships can be.
And that would kind of like maybe even leave a bad taste about farming just in general. You're like,
it certainly left a bad taste. Like something I still kind of work through is the idea of partnerships and how quickly partnerships in business can get misconstrued or get sideways. And
dude, it is. We've had lots of people on that talk about that.
Yeah,
and it is like a spouse. Like someone that you trust completely. They say more money, more problems, right? Like when things start getting out of whack a little bit. And so having control and being the decision maker and things like that, like especially in your core business, it's tough because you don't have someone to bounce ideas off of with a lot.
Yep.
But on the other side, you don't have someone to like put their hand in the cookie jar and take too much. So it's like it's a give and take there.
Certainly.
So you're rocking and rolling with the excavation
Asking
company.
Them a bunch of questions, looking for opportunities. I think at one point I even asked, like, what's your thoughts? Is there ever room for me to grow into an ownership position or anything? And like, to think back, that guy should have laughed me off right there. It's like, here's a 16-year-old kid asking if he could ever take ownership stake or find a way to partner or if there was ever any opportunities. And but he didn't laugh me off. He respected me, and he knew I was serious about it.
Do you still keep up with him?
Yeah, a little bit. I still respect him a lot, and we don't compete much or anything like that. He's still in business and doing well. And he had told me at that time, he's like, well, I've got 2 boys in college, and they're going to come back, and they did. Rhett's running that business and doing well, and so. So from there, I knew is like, okay, I see opportunity here. It's something that really interests me. I've got a passion for it, and I saw a place in the marketplace for it. And so just dumbly, I would say, like, I thought, man, I could get into this. And I called it a Craigslist hustler. Like, I was always buying and selling trucks and tractors and 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers and like always tinkering, always fixing. I loved mechanical repair and just kind of always had an engineering mind. So like I was already working out the solutions in my mind at that time of I built an old truck and had a little bit of money saved up from working other farm jobs. And okay, if I could sell this and roll that there and buy an excavator and if I can get the cash flow to work.
It's like flipping the red paper clip into a house, right? It's you just got to keep trading up. You just got to keep trading up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to the point where you have what does an excavator cost?
40-50 grand for anything decent.
So like you're a 16, 17-year-old kid and you're trying to trade up enough to have 50 grand?
I started more creative than that. I started by renting equipment. And so like the first job was funny enough. At school, I started talking about this, and what I did was I just had an Excel spreadsheet on my school-provided computer, and I just started researching any home builder, developer, commercial GC. Like I'm just straight Google search. I have no relationships. I don't have any family connections. Like I don't know anybody.
You're in a place that you don't like. Your dad doesn't know anyone except for one other farmer in Boone County.
Exactly. So I just start making this Excel spreadsheet, and I would just stalk them on Google as much as I could, or on the state database, and look up who their LLC was filed under, and all those kind of things. And I just built out a spreadsheet of every home builder, developer, commercial GC, who their owner was, any contact information I could find for them, email addresses, phone numbers. And so it was like freshman in high school, I would try to get my classwork done fast so that I could sit in a quiet spot and make cold calls. And it was try to call 5 of them a day. Passing periods, lunch period. Like I was just cold calling GCs and developers and clients.
Bro, they're like, yo, you want to come to sit at the lunch table? You're like, no, I got to make my 5 cold calls
day's
today.
Busy. Yeah. And I would call these clients and I'd be like, I could come by anytime after 3 o'clock today or 4 o'clock today. And I would never mention but never mention my age or my circumstance or that I was in school. And I would try to set up, hey, ask for an opportunity to come by your office, look at any upcoming jobs you've got, any issues you've got that I could help you on.
And like, who was the first one that like booked a meeting with you?
A guy named Mark Gradison was, I think, the number 2 name on that list, and quickly got back to me. And he's got a custom home building business in Indianapolis. And so we met on a job site, and it was like, hey, I've got this problem. Can you solve it? Yep, I'll do it. I'll do it for X. And just went right to it with Mark. And there was other guys too.
Like did you walk up and he's like, what the like, who is this kid?
Oh, no. I matured pretty quick. And so I always would avoid talking about age, would avoid talking about anything that pointed to age or maturity or life circumstance. Like, I came in as professional, and I try to keep it short and sweet.
Yep,
like,
you got a problem, I can solve it.
I see his facial hair. I've been trying to grow this since like 13 years old. Like, facial hair helps. And
He's got the dad's Rogaine on the cheeks, right? Like, I need this beard to get this next job. Okay, so you're down in Broad Ripple, and you get your first gig.
Yeah, rent a mini excavator from Joe Bright that owns Bobcat of Indy, or owned Bobcat of Indy. And so rent an excavator, negotiated some payment terms where it's like pay for materials up front, pay for time and labor and equipment on the backside. So that I could get just enough money in to buy some materials and get going. And then it was just rent a machine for the day, work a 16-hour day while I had that on rent, and then off rent it and send it back. And, rented, and then at some point bought the first excavator. And I did it by selling trucks and flipping and saving money and that kind of stuff. And so,
and I guess, I didn't even think about that, where it's like, I don't know, what's the cost to rent a Bobcat or rent an excavator for the day?
yeah, $700 for a day.
So you got $700 and it's like, okay, well, in 16 hours, I can get two full days of work out of one 24-hour rental.
Some of the equipment rental companies have got smart enough where it's like a day and then in fine print or 8 hours, whichever. And so you gotta be tricky about that.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
Wow.
But
So you're getting those first jobs, and like, so the first one comes from, what was his name?
Mark Gradison.
Mark
Homes.
Gradison. I feel like I've seen the name, right?
Yeah.
That's like a decent sized builder.
Oh, yeah.
To like give you an opportunity with the first one. And you deliver on the promise, and he's like, cool, like,
yeah.
Like, did you think
like,
much
don't
of
get me
it?
wrong, the first one was like a $2,000, like probably manual shovel, if I remember right, around something. And then it was a $4,000, and then an $8,000. And it's like, it wasn't just
What's the time frame on that?
plate.
Where are you running like a 2,000 to a 4,000 to an 8,000 and
rapidly. To 1 week over the next. Like, as quick as I could get the cash flow to do it, I was rolling into the next.
Dude, and like you're 16,
Yeah,
16?
I was almost 17 probably at that time, but 16.
So you're almost 17 years old and you're getting checks for $2,000. Like some kids will work a summer and not make $2,000.
Yeah, but also keep in mind, like, I had been working and making money since, I don't know, 11 years old, like 12 years old. Again, we didn't get paid to work on the family farm. So there's a hog farm down the road, and I would ride my bike or drive the gator or a four-wheeler down there and pressure wash hog rooms at night, like after school, before the baby pigs had come in for the next rotation of hogs. And I'd get paid like $60 for every hog barn I washed. So like, I'd been hustling and making money and buying snowmobiles for $1,000 and fixing them up and selling them for $2,000, like just anything you can imagine.
I mean, you're 16 years old. What was fun to you? Like, what part of your life did you look at and were like, man, this is fun?
Farm kids can come up with some pretty fun stuff. So like we would go mess around. I don't want to say like light stuff on fire, but pretty well light stuff on fire.
Dude, oh yeah. Like,
no,
and
tearing down
creative.
trucks. Yeah, tearing down trucks and building trucks. Like the first real business was actually will, power, and performance. And I was working on diesel trucks for people in the hay barn. And at this time I was 13 years old and like tearing down LBZ Duramaxes and doing injectors and turbos in trucks and I mean, pulling transmissions, putting axles.
How'd you learn how to do that?
Growing up on the farm. I've been turning wrenches since my hand was big enough to hold a wrench. Like we were driving tractors before we could reach the clutch. We would stand there to be able to push the clutch in on tractors. And so it just comes with it. Like growing up in that way, it sets you so far ahead and just knowing the mechanicals.
When you think through like parenting that way, like, do you think that's hard? Obviously you need help on the farm, but like there's a mixture between you don't want your kid to ever get injured or hurt, but you also don't want to baby them. And like, how did your parents think about that?
The older I get, the more I look back and respect my parents. Like my parents at one point had 5 kids under 4 years old. Love my mother. Man, she's a strong mother to be able to turn us loose on the farm and let us run wild. And it's like we had a certain area of boundary protection where it's like we're running wild, but we're running wild on the farm. So it was more of an early education on PTO safety and mechanical and pinch points, and like, hey, don't be an idiot. Put jack stands under that before you crawl under something, and brace that up, and don't put your hands where you wouldn't.
Yeah, and it's like some kids learn by like they have to touch the stove, but it's like you just gotta freaking see it.
Yeah,
you know?
And you get hurt. I mean, I always had a black fingernail or something cut up, and it's like you do learn by mistake a little bit. But my dad and the farm hands did a pretty good job of keeping us safe, but letting us explore and letting us learn our own ways, and
Which I think is a powerful way to learn. Nowadays,